Hello and welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of YouTube. I am your host, the whiteologist, Mr. Blows Your Minds, and this is Black Minds News Report. Black Minds News is to report, articulate, transmit, communicate, insinuate, develop, investigate, decode, unveil, spread the news, whether by news, video, website, or quotes from publications. As I articulate this information, I ask that the creator universe be here, heart, soul, mind, and spirit. Because why? The truth don't need no partner. As a descendant of the greatest people who created this land that you call the United States, read the today's children and present generation, we give honor to our ancestors. You know what the motto of my show is? I'm never gonna tell you what I heard. I'm only gonna tell you what I know. Today's date is May 27, 2020. You know, you heard the news that went around the country. Young man, brother, that was kneeled out before your eyes. Right? And at the time when I broke the story, the articles only kept saying a black man, right? Seeing that they didn't want to make reference to what his name was, as if he didn't matter. Now I want to apologize just in case for those at the beginning that had the Biden part in there. It's not a laughing matter. It was more about the folks' part that he did. So if anybody was offended by that, I want to apologize to you for that. They give my condolences to the family, because again, when I was doing that story, I did it right as it broke. As I seen it was with the hour in. So I went out there and said what I had to say. But today, we're going to get it right and give you the fullness of it. Stay tuned as we get into this broadcast. Hey, how's y'all doing, everybody? Again, this is your host, Mr. Blow Your Minds, and welcome to the most hated show in the back corner of the internet. Again, I'm your host. Want to first say foremost, my family was good to my subscribers. That's right. Old ones and new ones. Welcome again to another Black Minds News Report. Thank you for clicking onto the video. Passerbys, if you happen to pass by due to the thumbnail or maybe the title, welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. Been in the business for 8 years. Got a grand opening. You can always go down the aisle, see something that you might like, happen to see something to make you feel some kind of way. Remember, the motto of my show is the truth don't need no partner. I said, wait a minute, how you been around for 8 years and you can't get 200 views on the video? Because I'm the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. Did a video back on April 1st of 2014 talking about the white extinction. And from that day forward, they said this channel would never go nowhere beyond, I don't care how many subscribers you have, the views would be mandatorily suppressed. But we ain't in here for that. We ain't here to do what we got to do. Right? So anyway, what I'm going to do here today, based on yesterday, because I covered a couple other stories where I believe this story should have been by itself with no kind of interruptions but I added it because I had not been doing a show for a couple of days, and I had a couple of stories. So again, I want to apologize for those who might have felt like it might have been inappropriate for me to have in the beginning of the Biden more of a rendition, where it came from a piece that I had did earlier, actually back in October 2019, and where he talked about whether poor kids were just as good as white kids, right? And then he had put his foot in the mouth with Charlemagne, so I just tied them in together. Might have been the wrong timing. Once again, I apologize. So today we're going to go ahead. I was kind of fine-tuned a lot of things here. Hopefully this is going to get off the way it's supposed to. So let's see how we're going to get off here. And go through this little rendition. After we get done with this, I shall be back afterwards. And we ready to do this, sir? Ready? All right, let's go ahead and see if we can get it off. I don't think you're ready, sir. You don't look like you now. You look, oh, no, there you go. Now you look ready. All right, go ahead and do what you got to do. Y'all stay tuned, and we'll be right back after this. The United States birth rate has fallen to the lowest in 35 years. Experts worry we could face a demographic time bomb. You know I'm going to say that again. The United States birth rate has fallen to the lowest in 35 years. Experts worry we could face a demographic time bomb. This story is coming out of Yahoo News, May the 20th, 2020, and this is how this reads. There's been a steady decline in births in the United States, and 2019 recorded the fewest number of births in 35 years. Experts have warned the trend could lead to a demographic time bomb. The coronavirus could also impact birth rates in 2020, with some people choosing not to get pregnant and others unable to due to the halt of some fertility treatments. Filed this February 16, 2017, file photo shows newborn babies in the nursery of a postpartum recovery center in upstate New York. United States birth rate dropped for the fifth year in a row in 2019, producing the smallest number of babies in 35 years, according to numbers which were released Wednesday, May 20th, 2020, by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Fewer babies were born in the United States in 2019 than in any of the 35 years before, continuing a trend some experts have warned could lead to a demographic time bomb, or when fertility rates decrease as longevity increases. The preliminary reports out of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention found that there were about 3.7 million births in the United States in 2018, as 1% drop from 2018. Broken down further, birth among teenage moms are markedly down 5% among 15 to 19-year-olds. And women in their 20s were also less likely to give birth in 2019. Rates among 35 to 39-year-old women remain steady. For women over 40, though, birth rates were up about 2%, maintaining a theme also seen since 1935. Experts say the ongoing baby bust seems to be mostly attributable to changing attitudes towards parenthood that are leading more people to delay childbearing and have fewer children once they start, if they have children at all. According to gynecologist Dr. Eve Feinberg, declining birth rates are also influenced by misinformation about how fertility works. People overestimate the success of fertility treatments, Dr. Feinberg previously told Insider. While it is successful, it has limitations at older ages. This year's report also found the cesarean delivery rate dropped to under 32%, and the number of preterm births rose from the 5th year in a row to more than 10%. Experts have warned of a demographic time bomb. Some of the CDC reports is positive, mainly that teenage pregnancies and birth are significantly down once again. Between 2017 and 2018, for example, the birth rate among 15 to 19-year-olds decreased 7%, and in this last year, it decreased another 5%. But the overall trend has troubled some experts who say the United States could suffer a demographic time bomb in which there eventually aren't enough young people to support both the economy and older people who continue to live longer. At its most extreme, Insider previously reported the demographic time bomb could lead to the eventual extinction of a country's population. It is unclear how the coronavirus pandemic will affect 2020 birth rates. While celebrities appear to be enjoying a baby boom, the coronavirus pandemic could have the opposite effect on the population at large. Many people who need medical help to get pregnant have needed to delay their fertility treatments. Some may not resume their care or may find it too late once they're ready or able. Other couples are holding off on conceiving naturally because so much remains unknown about how the virus affects pregnant women and their future children. But the coronavirus effect on birth control and abortion access could outweigh these changes. Only time will tell. The decline due to the COVID-19 might be different given the extent and severity of the crisis and the long-lasting uncertainty that is caused by it. Hans-Peter Kohler, a University of Pennsylvania fertility researcher, told AP. Brief history of slavery and the origins of American policing. You know I'm going to say that again. Brief history of slavery and the origins of American policing. The birth and development of American police can be traced to a multitude of historical, legal, and political economic conditions. The institution of slavery and the control of blacks, however, were two of the more formidable historic features of American society shaping early policing. Slave patrols and night watches, which later became modern police departments, were both designed to control the behaviors of blacks. For example, New England settlers appointed Indian constables to police Native Americans. The St. Louis police were founded to protect residents from Native Americans in that frontier city, and many Southern police departments began as slave patrols. In 1704, the colony of Carolina developed that nation's first slave patrol. Slave patrol helped to maintain the economic order and to assist the wealthy landowners in recovering and punishing slaves who essentially were considered property. Policing was not the only social institution enmeshed in slavery. Slavery was fully institutionalized in American economics and legal orders, with laws being enacted at both the state and national divisions of government. Virginia, for example, enacted more than 130 slave statutes between 1689 and 1865. Slavery and the abuse of blacks, however, were not merely a Southern affair, as many have been taught to believe. Connecticut, New York, and other colonies enacted laws to criminalize and control slaves. Congress also passed fugitive slave laws, laws allowing the detention and return of escaped slaves. In 1793 and 1850, as Turner, Gakowski, and Vander remarked, the literature clearly established that a legally sanctioned law enforcement systems exist in America before the Civil War for the express purpose of controlling the slave population and protecting the interests of slave owners. Similarities between the slave patrol and modern American policing are too salient to dismiss or ignore. Hence, the slave patrol should be considered a forerunner of modern American law enforcement. Legal slavery and racism did not end after the Civil War. In fact, it can be argued that extreme violence against Black people became even worse with the rise of vigilante groups who resisted Reconstruction. Because vigilantes, by definition, have no external restraint. Lynch mobs had a justified reputation for hanging blacks first and asking questions later. Because of its tradition of slavery, which rested on the racist rationalization that blacks were subhuman. America had a long and shameful history of mistreating Black people long after the end of the Civil War. Perhaps the most infamous American vigilante group, the Ku Klux Klan, started in the 1860s, was notorious for assaulting and lynching Black men for transgressions that would not be considered crimes at all. Had a white man committed them, lynching occurred across the entire county, not just in the South. Finally, in 1871, Congress passed the Ku Klux Klan Act, which prohibits state actors from violating the civil rights of all citizens, in part because of law enforcement's involvement with the infamous group. This legislation, however, did not stem the tide of racial or ethnic abuse that persisted well into the 1960s. Though having white skin did not prevent discrimination in America, being white undoubtedly made it easier for ethnic minorities to assimilate into the mainstream of America. The additional burden of racism has made the transition much more difficult for those whose skin is Black. In no small part because of tradition of slavery, Blacks have long been targets of abuse. The use of patrol to capture runaway slaves was one of the precursors of formal police forces, especially in the South. This disastrous legacy persists as an element of police role even after the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In some cases, police harassment simply meant people of African descent were more likely to be stopped and questioned by the police, while at the other extreme, they have suffered beatings and even murders at the hands of white police. Questions still arise today about the disproportionately high numbers of people of African descent killed, beaten, and arrested by police in major urban cities of America. Slave Patrol. Slave Patrol called paddy rollers, or paddy rollers by the slaves, were organized group of armed white men who monitored and enforced discipline upon Black slaves in the antebellum United States, southern states. Slave Patrol's function was to police slaves, especially runaways and defiant slaves. They also formed river patrols to prevent escape by boat. Slave patrols were first established in South Carolina in 1704, and the idea spread throughout the colonies. The formation of slave patrols. Slave patrol first began in South Carolina in 1704 and spread throughout the 13 colonies, lasting well beyond the American Revolution. As the population of Black slaves boomed, especially with the invention of the cotton gin, so did the fear of slave resistance and uprising. Its development began when other means of slave control failed to instill slave controls and obedience. The biggest concerns were slaves on the plantation, since that is where slave populations were highest. At first, incentives such as tobacco and money were offered to urge whites to be more vigilant in the capture of runaway slaves. When this approach failed, slave patrols were formally established. Laws were put into place to regulate the activities of both Blacks and whites. Slaves who were encountered without passes were expected to be returned to their owners, as stated in the Slave Code. Punishment for runaway slaves could be expected. Black persons were subjugated to questioning, searches, and other forms of harassment, oftentimes whippings and beatings for non-compliant, and even complaints or compliant slaves could be expected. More than flogging and beating. However, slaves feared the threat of being placed on auction blocks and being separated from their families. If caught by patrols and returned to their masters, being placed on the auction block was an option for a master who no longer wanted to deal with their non-compliant slaves. During these times, slaves were often neglected and mistreated despite having permission to travel. State militias as patty rollers. Slave owners feared slave gatherers would allow them to trade or steal goods and the potential for organizing a revolt or rebellion. South Carolina and Virginia selected patrols from state militias. State militia groups were also organized from among the cadets of Southern military academies, of the Citadels and Virginia Military Institute, which were founded to provide a military command structure and discipline within the slave patrols and to detect, encounter, and crush any organized slave meetings that might lead to revolt or rebellion.
Take back the streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask what made them do this. They must be taken off the street. That's number one. There's a consensus on that. Unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing, because they literally, I yield myself 3 more minutes, because they literally have not been socialized. They literally have not had an opportunity. We should focus on them now. If we don't, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond the pale. And it's a sad commentary on society. We have no choice but to take them out of society. And the truth is, we don't very well know how to rehabilitate them at that point. That's the sad truth. I'm the guy that said, rehabilitation, when it occurs, we don't understand it and notice it. And even when we notice it and we know it occurs, we don't know why. So you cannot make rehabilitation a condition for release. That's why in our system, the federal system, you serve 85% of your time. It's a shame, but we don't know how to rehabilitate. But there is a consensus, and I will cease. A, we must make the streets safer. I don't care why someone is a malfactor in society. I don't care why someone is antisocial. I don't care why they've become a sociopath. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society, try to help them, try to change their behavior. That's why we do in this bill. We have drug treatment and we have other treatments to try to deal with it. But they are in jail, away from my mother, your husband, our families. But we would be absolutely stupid as a society if we didn't recognize the condition that nurtured those folks still exist, and we must deal with that.
Chaos and destruction in Minneapolis tonight as police officers and protesters clash over a man's death. Thanks for watching WCCO, also streaming on CBSN Minnesota.
The outrage began with a video showing police arresting 46-year-old George Floyd in South Minneapolis last night.
I can't breathe. Please, the knee in my dick.
In the video, you can see an officer kneeling on Floyd's neck, pinning him to the ground outside Cup Foods on Chicago and East 38th Street. Floyd died a short time later. Today, hundreds flooded the streets at that same intersection to protest Floyd's death. They then marched to the police station where the officers who arrested Floyd worked. Our team coverage begins tonight with Jeff Wagner. He joins us now from outside the Minneapolis Police 3rd Precinct, where a crowd is still gathered. Jeff?
Yeah, this crowd, I want to say comparative to about an hour ago, it's calmed down a bit, but then next thing you know, you start to hear the sound of tear gas being fired, flashbangs being fired. We've had what believes to be rubber bullets of sorts fly not far from us, hearing people get hit. There's still hundreds of people here who are actually standing right by the 3rd Precinct, right next to the officers. It's been a pretty chaotic scene starting about 6 p.m. tonight. A far cry from what it was earlier. Now, this all started at the intersection of 38th and Chicago. Thousands packed the area for the protest at 5 o'clock, but were also spread out to remain socially distant. Organizers emphasized keeping this protest peaceful. People took turns sharing their frustrations and grief with the crowd. Chants of "I can't breathe" and "It could have been me" filled the air. A man who claims to have been one of the witnesses of Floyd's arrest also addressed the crowd. Protesters were glad to know that the 4 officers involved were fired, but they say the true justice won't be served until there's charges and a conviction.
When you look at situations, you say to yourself, could this have been prevented? And that goes without saying in regards to this situation. That young man was no longer a threat once you subdued him, handcuffed him, and you had your knee on his neck. You could have very easily got up, put him in a car like you was asked to on several occasions.
It's heartbreaking. I mean, we're all human beings, and we're all in this community together. It's just tough to see someone and have their life ended the way it did.
Now, around 6 p.m., the protest turned into a march towards the 3rd Precinct, where it is believed that the officers worked. A much smaller group than the initial protest started vandalizing the building, shattering a window, spray painting squad cars and the side of the building. Officers then showed up in riot gear and started firing tear gas and flashbangs, which you can hear going off right now, as many protesters were hurling rocks, water bottles, anything they could get their hands on towards the officers. The unruly crowd measured in hundreds, a far cry from the peaceful group that started the protest.
It's real ugly. The police have to understand that, this the climate they have created.
It appears we have a long night ahead of us. Again, every few seconds when it gets quiet, you suddenly hear the sounds of flashbangs and tear gas being fired in the crowd. You're looking at it right now. You're watching the crowd disperse. It appears someone might have been shot with one of those rubber paint bullets. People are very upset tonight. I spoke on the phone a few minutes ago with Trey Pollard. He's one of the sound bites you heard earlier. He's one of the organizers of the initial protest. He said this is not what was supposed to happen. He said this is an anger and spillover of what people are feeling, but this is not the right platform to express that. He said this is not the way it was supposed to end this evening, an evening that's far from finished again.
All right, Jeff, thank you.
Breaking news in our national lead right now. Moments ago, the chief of police in Minneapolis announced that he had fired 4 police officers involved in the arrest and subsequent death of a black man in police custody. George Floyd repeatedly told the officers that he could not breathe after an officer knelt on his neck, pinning him to the ground during an arrest. A bystander captured yesterday's incident on a cell phone camera, a warning this might be difficult to watch. Police say Floyd was resisting arrest on a forgery charge, but this disturbing video we're about to show you did not capture that. It begins when Floyd's already on the ground.
Well, you got him down, man. Let him breathe, at least, man. I can't breathe. I've been trying to help out. So you can breathe a little bit more. Neck, man. One of my homies died. You breathe with the backbone. I'm about to die. Just say. Relax. Man, I can't breathe my face. Just get up.
The video posted on Facebook goes on for 10 minutes. You can hear several witnesses ask the officer, why does he still have his knee on George Floyd's neck? CNN's Omar Jimenez is live for us in Minneapolis. And Omar, give us the details from the press conference with the police chief.
Well, the press conference with that police chief, one of the big things he was trying to call for was a push for trust between the police and the community here. And this was, in part, came from the swift action we saw this police department take. Let's remember, this just happened yesterday, and within 24 hours, all 4 of the officers involved with this have been fired. And we've seen, sadly, many of these cases play out throughout the country, and that type of action, I should say, hasn't come as quickly as we have seen. And when you watch that video, that again is disturbing to many people, it plays out for 10 minutes. He is communicating with the officers, George Floyd, on the ground there for some time, saying, I can't breathe, I need to be taken to, he needs medical help in regards to that. And then at one point, the words begin to trail off, and then his body isn't moving at all, as bystanders are literally asking for officers to check for a pulse. Here's what the mayor of Minneapolis had to say a little bit earlier today.
What we saw was horrible, completely and utterly messed up. This man's life matters. He matters. I believe what I saw, and what I saw was wrong at every level.
And George Floyd obviously was the man that was unfortunately killed in this incident. He's being represented by Benjamin Crump, the attorney, who released a statement saying this abusive, excessive, and inhumane use of force cost the life of a man who was being detained by the police for questioning about a non-violent charge, and is part of why we are seeing people out protesting today, Jake.
Right, police say it was a forgery arrest. What else are police saying about this?
Well, in regards to what led up to this, I'll give you a little quick scene setter here. You see that Cup Foods over my shoulder here at 38th and Chicago here in the Minneapolis area. It was there that police first got the report of a potential forged document being used in a purchase, and they were later given a description that may have matched George's. And when they got there, it was a physical resistance to an arrest, according to police at that time, that began the sort of entanglement. And then, of course, the horror that we saw unfold in that video, Jake.
George Floyd, the young man that was murdered in broad daylight by 4 animals, ex-police officers. These are not police officers. These are fucking murderers. The guy says, I can't breathe. What the fuck else do you need? These guys are standing around all casual while the guy's dying. You don't fucking bat an eye. That doesn't freak you out, you savage? And if there's no cell phone footage, then what? Then what happens? You make up some fucking bullshit. This woman in Central Park yesterday, the young man in Georgia, every fucking day, 20. I can't fucking breathe. And these cocksuckers, they show up to court like they're on a fashion shoot. You kill people, rapists, pedophiles, school shooters, no marks. You beat up an old man in an old age home, no marks. And you fucking kill this guy in 2020. You're that fucking spooked out in 2020 by black people. That's what the fuck it is. You're scared of black people. We're in 2020, and you're fucking spooked the fuck out by black people. Because you never see a white cop in the middle of Manhattan choking to death a 42-year-old Jewish man. You'll never see that footage. That'll never happen. This fucking 2020. This fucking bullshit's going on with all the fucking problems we got all around the world. You're killing motherfuckers in broad daylight. Lock these pieces of shit up under the jail and then execute them. Fucking standing around like it's like a Sunday afternoon stroll.
Would you please stop? Sir, I'm asking you to stop.
Please don't come close to me.
Sir, I'm asking you to stop recording me.
Please don't come close to me.
Please take your phone off.
Please don't come close to
And
me.
I'm taking a picture and calling the cops.
Please call the cops. Please call the cops.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Please tell them whatever you like.
Excuse me? I'm sorry, I'm in the Ramble, and there is a man, African-American, he has a bicycle helmet. He is recording me and threatening me and my dog. There is an African-American man, I am in Central Park. He is recording me and threatening myself and my dog. And my... I'm sorry, I can't hear you either. I'm being threatened by a man in the Ramble. Please send the cops immediately. I'm in Central Park in the Ramble. I don't know.
Thank you.
Don't go on my car.
I'm not going in your car.
Bro, don't touch me, bro. You can't touch me, bro. Don't touch my car and don't touch me.
I'm not touching your car.
Don't touch me,
I'm looking
bro.
inside of your car.
Don't touch me. You can't look inside my
Yeah, I'm 10-4. Send me another unit.
You can't touch me, bro. Straight up.
I'm not touching you. Okay?
That's 1018. Need him for.
Just, very angry. Listen, man. What are you doing out here? You just chilling?
I'm chilling, bro. I'm rapping. I'm rapping in the car. To instrumentals.
Okay. That's fine. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on here.
I work.
I get that you're working.
What else you want from me?
I'm just trying to figure out what's going on out here, man.
I'm working, rapping. I rap.
Okay.
What the hell is you talking about?
I know you're just acting you're jumping around, getting a little bit nervous on me. I think I see something plastic in the thing over here.
Go ahead, bro. You can't go in my car.
You're not allowing me to search your car?
You can't go in my.
I'm not asking you. Just don't reach the car, man.
Get your hand out of your pocket.
Hands out of your pocket.
Down. Warning, down.
Stay on the ground. Just stay on the ground, okay?
Keep your hands out. No, keep your hands out.
I've already checked him for weapons. I've checked him for weapons.
Okay.
Listen, man. I'm not here to mess with you, okay? I've been cool with you the entire time. You get out of the car, you come up on me, okay? I get that, man, and I'm just here to make sure everything's okay. I don't know you, you don't know me, all right?
I'm in the park trying to ease my mind. I'm rapping. I rap, bro. I rap.
I got you, man, but when you run up on me and you get really jumpy, that's going to make me nervous, too.
Aggravate my day. I got 1 day off a week. 1 day.
Okay.
1 day off a week. I'm trying to chill on my day off, bro. I'm up early in the morning trying to chill.
I see, and I get that. I get one to chill, too. But we get a lot of bad stuff that happens out here. We get gang and drug activity. We get all kinds of stuff out here.
Ain't tied up in any of that?
No, it is not. We'll go ahead and get your hair, man.
Screwed up, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, he was very, very jumpy. Yeah, it's because I came out here to find out.
Police are releasing very few details about what happened early this morning, but we do know Sergeant John Mattingly, who was shot and remains hospitalized tonight, is expected to make a full recovery.
Just before 1 Friday morning, neighbors on Springfield Drive in southwest Louisville woke up to the sound of gunfire. They say it sounded like more than a dozen gunshots, and it was close.
I buried my head in the pillow because I didn't want to get shot.
My little daughter was just yelling, "Daddy, is that a war?"
The shots were so close, in fact, one actually ended up in Stanley David's hallway. He lives directly above the apartment where 3 officers with LMPD's Criminal Interdiction Division were serving a warrant related to a drug investigation. After knocking on the door and announcing their presence, police told us this.
The officers forced entry into the exterior door and were immediately met by gunfire. Sergeant Mattingly sustained a gunshot wound and returned fire.
2 other officers, Detectives Miles Cosgrove and Brett Hankison, also returned fire before pulling Mattingly, a 20-year veteran of the department, to safety.
Our Sergeant Mattingly underwent surgery for a leg wound early this morning, and thankfully he is expected to make a full recovery.
According to police, this man, Kenneth Walker, surrendered peacefully, but the SWAT team later found a woman dead inside. As for neighbors, they're relieved the situation wasn't worse.
I tell God, thank you for everything, because he's the one that kept us, alive today.
Sergeant John Mattingly and the 2 other detectives involved have been placed on administrative reassignment pending the outcome of this investigation. And tonight, I'm told that investigation is still in its very early stages. Reporting from LMPD, I'm Lauren Adams, WLKY News.
Central Police Department, Lions being recorded the shots.
Hey, we've had some break-ins in my neighborhood, and there's a real suspicious guy. It's Retreat View Circle. The best address I can give you is 111 Retreat View Circle. This guy looks like he's up to no good, or he's on drugs or something. It's raining and he's just walking around looking about.
Okay, and this guy, is he white, black, or Hispanic?
He looks black.
Did you see what he was wearing?
Yeah, a dark hoodie, like a gray hoodie, and either jeans or sweatpants and white tennis shoes. He's here now, he was just staring.
Oh, he's just walking around the area?
At all the houses.
Okay.
And now he's just staring at me.
Okay, he said it's 1111 Retreat View or 111?
That's the clubhouse.
That's the clubhouse. Do you know what he's near the clubhouse right now?
Yeah, now he's coming towards me.
Okay.
He's got his hand in his waistband. Yeah, he's a black male.
Okay. How old would you say he was?
He's got a button on his shirt. Late teens.
Late teens, okay.
Something's wrong with him. Yeah. He's coming to check me out. He's got something in his hands. I don't know what his deal is.
Okay, just let me know if he does anything, okay?
Over here.
Yeah, we got him on the way. Just let me know if this guy does anything else.
Okay. He's an asshole. They always get away. Yeah. When you come to the clubhouse, you come straight in and make a left. Actually, you go past the clubhouse.
Okay, it says on the left-hand side from the clubhouse?
No, you go in straight through the entrance, and then you make a left. Yeah, you go straight in, don't turn and make a left. Shit, he's running.
He's running? Which way is he running?
Down towards the entrance of the neighborhood.
Okay, which entrance is that he's heading towards?
The back entrance.
Are you following us?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need you to do that. Alright, sir, what is your name?
George. He ran.
Alright, George, what's your last name?
Zimmerman.
And George, what's the phone number you're calling from?
407-435-2400.
Alright, George, would you have them on the way? Do you want to meet with the officer when they get out there?
Yeah.
Alright, where are you going to meet with them at?
If they come in through the gate, tell them to go straight past the clubhouse and straight past the clubhouse and make a left. And then they go past the mailboxes. Look for my truck.
Okay, what address are you parked in front of?
I don't know. It's a cut through, so I don't know the address.
Okay, do you live in the area?
Yeah.
What's your apartment number?
It's a home. It's 1950. Oh crap! I don't want to get that loud. I don't know where this kid is.
Okay, do you want to just be with them right near the mailboxes, son?
Yeah, that's fine.
Sunday night, what were you doing, and just walk us through what happened.
So on Sunday night around 10:15 p.m. I was in my room and I was playing my game as usual, and I heard a loud bang. At first I didn't realize it was a door knock. I thought it was just like someone banging on the bathroom door because they thought I was in there, but I wasn't. Then I heard it again and it was louder the next time, so I sprinted to my door without checking the windows or who was at the door, and I opened it. And as soon as I open the door, I see these guys in front of me, and they're holding guns, and it looks like there's one in a police uniform, and he's the one that speaks to me first. He says, we're looking for a missing girl. We were given this address and we were given your name, and we were told that she's here, so we're gonna intern. And that's when I told him, no, you can't come in, this is my house. And I'm assuming, well, these people told me that they related to the missing girl that they were looking for, and I told them that she wasn't here and that I don't have the missing girl that they're looking for. And that's when they began to still try to come in. So then that's when my mom came in. And
I was asleep because it was at, I go to bed pretty early. So 10 o'clock I'm asleep, And like you said, we hear the knock on the door, and I hear it again, and then I look out my bedroom window and I see all these people with the long flashlights all surrounded my door. And I went to the front door, came out of my bedroom, went into the living room, and by the time I got in the living room, he had already opened the door. And when I got closer, he was trying to close the door. They were trying to push their way in. And so, me being the mother that I am, I'm going to protect my children. I made him step all the way back to the very end of the living room. And because the crowd was just really they were angry. And I did not know still what was going on. And then, like you said, the individual that was in the front had a law enforcement uniform on. He never stated who he was. He never stated what agency he was from. He just said, I'm going to step inside, close the door, and talk to you guys. And I said, no, you're not. And he had his foot on the threshold of my door, holding the door open. And he said it again. He said, I'm going to step inside, close the door, and talk to you. And I said, no, you're not. And the whole time, there's the other guy to the right of me, pointing at him, saying they gave us this address and they gave us your name. And I kept asking, what name did they give? I still didn't know why they were at my door. Look, and another person came lunging towards us, and someone in the crowd held him back to keep him from coming in the house. But the whole time, of course, I noticed the weapon on the law enforcement's hip, and I didn't know what was going to happen. And I kept telling my son, I need you to sit down and calm down. Do not come close to us, because I didn't know if they would have felt threatened, what would have happened. And then, you know, the whole time, like I said, I'm just worried that the worst would have happened.
In this day and age, did this shock you that some sort of mob showing up at your house to ask for your son would happen in 2020?
Yes. I'm still in shock. I'm literally like, I don't sleep well. I'm still in shock. Because I've always had a conversation with him about the reality of the world. But I never thought that I ever had to have a conversation where he had to feel unsafe in his home. I mean, that's our safe haven. That's where we're supposed to feel safe. And I was being questioned as to whether or not this was my house. Like, you live here? Like, this is your house? I never thought I had to deal with that. I'm very disappointed.
And why do you think he said that? This community is
predominantly white. Predominantly white. And that's never been an issue for us, because I've always raised him in a predominantly white neighborhood. But to question whether we belong here, I felt like it was too much. And the whole time he's in the background, almost about to fall apart, because he's thinking, because he relayed that to me, I opened the door and they're going to hurt my mom. And I'm saying, I need you to stay back so they don't hurt you. Because when emotions are going, things can happen. But we have to not put ourselves in that situation. Coming to the door like that with a mob of people with guns, what do we expect? What were the intentions? Like, what if he was the person that they were looking for? Or what if I was not at home? What would have happened? I don't want to have that conversation. I don't want him to be a statistic. I mean, it's scary.
Will you tell us a little bit more as far as how many people do you think were at your door, and once your mom came forward and kind of pushed you back, I mean, what was going through your mind as you kind of backed up and saw her go into it?
And how many had weapons?
Well, when I opened the door, I was in shock because I wasn't expecting to see people with weapons at my door, especially in the type of neighborhood I live in, starting off. But about around the time whenever my mom came out and she grabbed me, I didn't want to get back because I was like, I don't want you to deal with this because I'm the only man in the house at the moment. So I wanted to go to the door, so I ran to the door and I wanted her to step back, but she didn't want me to go up there because she felt like I was in danger. So she began to pull me back, and I was upset because she was at the door and I was forced to sit down and I couldn't do anything about what was going on at the time. So it made me feel really upset that she had to deal with that, and I was sitting there just watching it all happen. Like, what if that always goes on in my head whenever I think about the situation every day.
Ohio public health officials apologized after releasing mass guidance for African Americans to avoid wearing face coverings with gang symbolism. You know I'm going to say that again. Ohio public health officials apologized after releasing mass guidance for African Americans to avoid wearing face coverings with gang symbolism. This story is coming out of Yahoo News, May the 23rd, 2020, and this is how it reads. Public health officials in Ohio, most populous county, on Wednesday apologized after releasing guidelines that encourages African Americans and communities of color to avoid wearing facial coverings associated with gang symbolism. The guidance that minority communities should avoid fabrics that elicit deeply held stereotypes, including bandanas, skull prints, and horror prints. The Franklin County Department of Public Health also advised against wearing red or blue bandanas, as these are typically associated with gang symbolisms. Public health officials in Franklin County, Ohio, apologized last week after they released guidance on wearing face masks that targeted the African American community and urges against wearing facial coverings that elicits gang symbolisms. Franklin County Public Health apologized for a recent guidance documented focus on mask coverings for African Americans. The agency said in a statement posted Wednesday to Twitter, said, some of the language used came across as offensive and blaming the victims. It added, we have listened to the opinions that have been expressed and are using the voice of the public to inform any new guidance we put out. Everyone deserves to feel safe while wearing a face covering and not to be subjected to stigma, bias, or discrimination. We apologize and will continue to stay engaged in tough conversations to better for the communities we serve. Franklin County is the largest county in Ohio by population and is home to the state capital city of Columbus. Earlier this month, the County Board of Health declared racism a public health crisis. The apology came after the agency released a document titled COVID-19 General Guidance on Wearing Face Masks for African Americans and Communities of Color. FDPH said it aimed to ensure that all individuals feel safe and can protect themselves from COVID-19 when out in public by wearing a face mask, according to WOSU. The document recommends that African Americans and other people of color avoid fabrics that elicit deeply held stereotypes, including bandanas, skull prints, and horror prints. When utilizing a homemade mask, avoid bandanas that are red or blue, as these are typically associated with gang symbolisms. The guidance read, it also urged against the wearing of scarves, just simply tied around the head, claiming that doing such was associated with unsavory behavior. In response to the agency's apology last week, some said the guidance pointed towards a larger problem, a potential lack of diversity among the agency staff. Seriously, just let the measly few POCs you employ help you when addressing these communities, one person wrote on Twitter. And always proof your documents before releasing. As the New York Times reported, black men in particular have expressed concerns that the Center for Disease Control and Prevention April recommendation that encourages facial covering to limit the spread of COVID-19 makes them susceptible to racial profiling and police harassment. In April, California Senator Kamala Harris of California and members of the Senate Judiciary Committee asked federal law enforcement agencies to provide anti-bias training and guidance to police officers as states reopen and masks become more prevalent. All 50 states have begun to relax stay-at-home orders, meaning residents are returning to businesses that now require facial coverings. Ohio public health officials apologize after releasing mass guidance. Sorry about that there. But we are back, right? After a little rendition of the news report for the day. Gave you a lot of the fat to chew on. Guess you were paying attention. And if not, well, you know we're going to go over it anyway, right? So you might have was thinking, the hell was the birth rate by? Right? I seen you put some stat up there talking about the birth rate and that how 35 years the United States is going into a decline. And I might be thinking, well, what is that about? You know what I'm saying? I couldn't understand what that was pertaining to, right? So let me show you something here, right? Got a graph here. Let me see. Are we going to pull it up? Can we pull it up? All right, let me go ahead and do it. There you go. So you see this here. They was talking about in that article, they were talking about the CDC is the one who came up with this statistics. And, you know, the CDC lately has been in the news due to the simple fact that we have still the lingering effects of a pandemic. I know after just thinking about March 13th or 12th or 13th of 2020, it was a national emergency claimed by the president. And then by May, it was over with, or it's dissipating when we reopened it. So that was a short, quick pandemic, right? Now, again, I know we're over about 100,000 according to what they state, and we don't make light of the fact of people who may be affected and who have died. We're not saying that it did not exist. And then, as you've been an avid watcher over here, we've been touching a lot of that. But as to talking about the brother, George Floyd, right? Because when I originally did the story yesterday, it was so fresh and new that they didn't even have put his name, right? And I'm going to show you as I go down later that did they do that with intent. For some odd reason, myself, I keep forgetting the brother's name. And maybe it has something to do with the simple fact that maybe that might be a strategic, psychological thing that they do by not reporting a name and just keep specifying black men instead of saying the name, so that when we talk about pantheons of others, as you know, Trayvon Martin, Castile, Brown, Gardner, and many others, Bland and others, right? Those names are etched in our mind. Even Xavier Johnson, right? We don't put him in the pantheon. He's kind of isolated, but that brother needs to also be in there because he did what he had to do. And I think we need to also in remembrance of him as well. So anyway, I start off with the birth rate is because many people don't equate. Now, again, remember I told you I did a video back in April 1st of 2014. And in that video, I it was labeled extinction of the white race. Now, I wasn't saying anything that we were going to do in particular, but it was just saying that there was a coming demographic catastrophe that was about to befall upon white people, Caucasian people. And now what I did is I put out the data, the news reports, and articles that validated what I was talking about. And then at that time I was able to put movies. So I put a whole Patreon and a whole video together. Many of you subscribed based on that video. I wish I could have did that video today with the technology I have now compared to what I had then. It would have been a whole lot better. But even though it got to the point, it went viral for what you call in the black corner of the internet. Once it got close to that 300,000, they cut it down, shut the channel down. Well, now, no matter what I do live, there's a lot of interruptions and so forth. And it just be, maybe 100, 150, 200 views, even though it got 2.9 thousand subscribers. But neither here nor there anyway. But the reason why I did the birth rate, because again, they came back again in 2020, talking about a 35-year decline in the birth. So what I want to show you here is that this is a chart that they had out of the CDC. Okay. And they talked about a 35-year decline. I took it back 60 years, right? So 60 plus 1990 is going to bring you to 2020. So you can see it says on your screen there that it's 23.7. So what they're saying is within 1,000, for every 1,000 people, there's 23.7 birth, right? And that goes back to 1960. And so what we're going to do is going to go up to 10 years. So we're going to see as the graph is going to go up, but it's going down, but it's going to go up. So we're going from 1960. Now I'm going to go down. You see it's going to 1964, 1965. It went down to 19. Then it gets around 1970. It's at 18.4, right? So it's 18.4. It started at 24, right? So it went down about 5 point something, right, percent. And that's in 1970. And then it's going to go down again from 1970. And we're going to go to the next 10 years, which is going to bring us to 1980, right? And so in 1980, let me go back over here to 1980. I missed that right there. I'm going to go back right there. So in 1980, you have 15.9. So even from 18.4 and 70, it's still declining, right? And as we go closer over to the 90s from this 1980, remember, it took a little dip in the 70s and 75. It dipped from there and went down, but it kind of declined a little bit. But then it's going to pick up again here in 1990. 1990, it took a little peak, went to 16.7, right? Now, what was happening in the 1990s? You have, we're coming off of dealing with still, crack cocaine is still prevalent, right? And based on this incline, you would think that, why would it be an incline? Because a lot of people were dying due to the simple. I did a video where I showed you the numbers between the major urban cities, how there was a shift in the numbers from Chicago, New York, and California, and so forth. You can see the numbers shift. But the CDC says that there was a spike in 1990s, and me, myself, going back and remember the 90s, this was kind of an era where there was a lot of stuff that was happening. But then you was having a resurgence of black men trying to be fathers to their children. You're seeing women with 2, maybe 3 children, and there was a man present, right? You were seeing with the strollers and the men, and they were out and about trying to do the father thing. But then you also had the element of domestic violence because of the OJ situation, right? Is being implemented where, whether right or wrong, a man might be doing something wrong, or maybe the woman using it as a get out of the situation card. You got child support now starting to be on this generation, because the generation before that, they fathers, okay, primarily what I'm saying is Generation X. Right? Generation X is the one who they targeted. Think about that. Generation X would have been the children from those who were of the 60s, right? Most of the Generation X parents, if they had them, let's say, we're going to say anywhere between, in their 20s, even 18, right? And then they would have been the ones who were probably doing some of the, not all, because there was a lot of people who were not for everything that was going down at that time. For myself, I could say some things, but neither here nor there. That'll be another topic another time. But we were the children of that time, and not so much of the babies, but all those who were of that time were still being Generation X. So there was a resurgence in the 90s of those who trying to repair. Maybe their fathers weren't there. They was out of single, and they was trying to do not what their father did. And so you were seeing that. But remember Joe Biden, what you've seen in there, he did that talk in 1993. This is before that crime bill is being implemented, right? Because it's Gen X is going to be the ones who out there who are going to be peddling majority of the work that's out there. Now, you do have some of the baby boomers who were the late baby boomers, because 65 is going to start with Generation X. So you're going to have people who were born 60, 61, 62, maybe even 58, 59, who would be still kind of like the big brothers of Gen X, but they really kind of boomers. You get what I'm saying? And so they kind of there too, but it's Gen X who really is going to be the blunt of who seemed like the target was to crack them. So when Joe Biden, you heard in that speech, was talking about going after this particular, is because what crack did, those who were susceptible, as into either you became addicted by it, selling it to be incarcerated, right? Or you got killed, either from dealing, serving, trying to rob to get, whatever it was, right? So there was a lot of blows and cuts, how that was working. But again, that was the 90s. So now when you see this chart, as it gets down to, going to move to the millennials and get to where we are today, guess what? That number, you see in 2000, it's down to 14, 2007, 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, until we to the 20, it's at 11.6 today. Now, the thing is, in these articles, when you do a lot of research on this and you see the data about this, they don't talk a lot about the black birth rate. They'll generalize and say, this thing about we, right? This French shit that people like to say, like, you hear some people, we messing up the planet. We're the ones putting all these gases in it, and we're the ones that are just fracking. There ain't no French we in this shit. It's they doing it. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have people who've been chosen amongst our people who has certain talents and abilities that the system don't grab and bring them in, that acclimate them in, and then they become facilitated cogs and springs for their mechanism of machine. But that doesn't encompass all of us as a whole. Again, if you took a DNA test, that DNA test is going to come back and say that, guess what? Maury Povich is going to say, white man, you are the father, right? Now, again, I know a lot of y'all ain't into about the black and white. And again, to me, it's always been about race. Now, the thing is, where we at right now, white people going to have to show who they are. You ain't going to be able to sit on the sidelines and be, as Martin Luther King has said, online lookers. Onlookers. He didn't say online, but I'm saying online. But I'm saying onlookers is what Martin Luther King said. Being onlookers, meaning that you may be against it as to something, as you say, moral inside of you, but your actions. Because when shit, and how you say, when shit hits the fan, you automatically have a natural jersey on for the team that you own. You know what I'm saying? Need I say that again? You naturally got a jersey on for the team that you are on. Now, what's in your head might be different than what your jersey on. So that allows people to be traitors and spies for other teammates or other teams. But the natural jersey that one is in, based on how the history has been laid and how it's been set up, we know as time went on in the way that the game and the way people sell money and materials and wealth and fame, that some people will go against their own people, right? And so they do what they do to survive what they think is best fitting, and it becomes an individual thing. And so I'm going to say, looking at this again, from 1960, from 24 to where we are today, 2020, we're down to 11. Remember, they saying by 2044 that white people demographically will become a minority in this country. You heard Michael Rappaport say the stuff that he said as talking about, white people being scared of black people, and here it is 2020. Now, he might be speaking outwardly, but he's still speaking codedly, if you ask me, right? He's saying that they scared, but he's not really telling you why they scared. Well, it has a lot to do with this coming demographic time bomb, as that article talked about, saying that white people are on a time limit as to the fertility for them to procreate, to replenish. Now, remember, they just gone through, meth? They just had a pandemic in the meth, right? Well, we don't even know the true numbers of how many, but we know, at least some of the stuff I've been reading, they talk about from a certain age group, late 20s and early 40s, where masses of them had died from overdosing on this, Oxycontin, meth, that whole shit there. Now, a lot of people were saying, well, see now how they come up with the legislation about trying to give them places. Matter of fact, they was even saying they was going to give them facilities they can go and do the drugs, and it wouldn't be a crime. They would consider it a sickness. But when what's happened to us, that was going through the 80s and the 90s, people were just getting locked up. That's the whole thing that people are trying to hold now about Joe Biden, about that crime bill, is because you didn't see that as a sickness. You seen that as all criminality, whether you were selling it, peddling it, or using it. And as time went on, we start seeing that how, when we find out the privatization of the, of mass incarceration and how profitable that was, we can understand why that was implemented, right? And so you heard in Joe Biden when he was talking about what he was saying. But before I get there, before I get to the Joe Biden, we had to talk about that history, right? Now, the birthright is the foundation to where the fuel is coming from when it comes to them. That's where the fuel is coming from. Because they know, but when I did the video in 2014, some of the comments that y'all didn't get to see, that was the private conversations, they said I knew what I was talking about, but they didn't believe you could hear what I was talking about or understand what I was talking about. But somewhere in those almost 300,000 people who seen the video before they made me take it off, somebody decided to say, you need to take that down. We don't need them to be seeing this and having this in their mind. Then I also was showing you how he was using the intravenous for the to get the baby, right? And I broke a lot of that down too. But because of the pandemic right now, and there was articles that was talking about how they were trying to say that the people who were trying to get abortions, that because of the pandemic, they were not going to allow, which also prohibited those who were going to use treatment to try to have babies. Then articles came out just about a week or so ago talking about they now finding that the COVID was in the sperm. So I had to ask myself, who's doing this? Is this by coincidence? Now, I know we know that they put us as the face of the pandemic, but the stuff I'm telling you is real. So a people who seem to be having a hard time procreating and understand that the demographic time bomb is set for 2044, which is 24 years from now, are looking at the prosperity of their people, thinking that those people, matter of fact, let me show you something. Let me take y'all in the time. Let me take you back. Let me take you back. I'm still going forward, but I'm going to take you back. I want to take you somewhere right quick. Something I had did back in, I did this video back in 2000 and, when did I do this video? 2015 maybe? Might have been 2015, right? Might have been 2015. Let me see if I can find, if you know, can you find that one for me? Let's see. Because that one there is going to take you to, let's see. Can we find that one? What's this here? No, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it either. What's this one? That's not it. We're going to have to pull that up. Or maybe is it that one? Nope, not that one either. Huh? All right, so we're going to have to pull it up off the rig. We're going to pull that up. Because this video here that I'm about to show you, I'm going to take you back. And it was a video I had did, and it was talking about the original rebels, right? It was talking about those in Haiti. Those who I was talking at that particular time did a video on it was a 2-3 part series. It was talking about the original rebels, and I was giving some homage to what had happened in Haiti. But there was a part in that video, in this segment that I did here, that I want you to hear. It's not long at all, but there's a history I tell in here. And in this history, it's kind of like what's been going to be said here by Thomas Jefferson. Then Joe Biden comes in 93 and is kind of doing the same thing. So I want you to hear this. We ready to do this? I think we're ready, right? I think we're ready. Okay. And go ahead, let's do this and be right back. Check this out, y'all. I'm taking y'all back to Mr. Blow Your Mind. Matter of fact, this was 2012 when I did this. So check this out. This is 8 years ago. Check this out. The thing that we need to be looking at when we're talking about this particular story here is that the original revolutionaries and what aspects they did and what the price they paid was, once they ousted the Napoleon and the French off of the land, okay, in America, we told about Louisiana and how it was the cheapest purchase that had ever been in the history of, you know, land purchase or land sale, right? But the reason why that happened is because once Napoleon knew that they was losing and that was going to be taken, well, again, think about it. When you usurp a land, you get all this land, territory, everything that comes with the whole entire package. So if the Haitians were going to annex Haiti along with Louisiana, guess who was going to have a problem? Well, the reason why it was a problem, you know it was a problem, for a lot of y'all who don't know your history, in 1797, Thomas Jefferson was deeply disturbed about what was happening over there. Now, you're talking about 1797, you're talking about 6 years of this war. They knew what was going on. They knew that they was getting their ass murked over there. You know what I'm saying? And so they felt that, and this is, I'm going to quote something that came from Thomas himself, according to how they write in history. They said that Thomas Jefferson said, he said, if something isn't done and soon done, we shall be the murderers of our own children. Okay? The revolutionary storm now sweeping the globe will be upon us, and happy if we make timely provision to give it an easy passage over our land from the present day, or the present state of things in Europe and America. The day which begins our combustion must be near at hand, and only a single spark is wanting to make that day tomorrow. Now, what did he just say here? Thomas Jefferson just said, and I'm going to read that again because I probably wasn't too clear. It's a little late right now and I'm a little sleepy, but I'm doing this because, you know, sometimes y'all need to be fed. There's a lot of different brothers and sisters out here with a whole lot of different ways of how they're dispersing information and teaching. No one way is the right way, and all information, I believe, is good information, again, as long as you know how to absorb it and digest it. Now, this is what I'm saying here. This is what Thomas Jefferson said in 1791. He said, if something isn't done, and soon done, we shall be the murderers of our own children. The revolutionary storm now sweeping the globe will be upon us, and happy if we make time provisions to give it an easy passage over our land. From the present state of things in Europe and America, the day which begins our combustion must be near at hand, and only a single spark is wanted to make that day tomorrow. Now, what he's saying here is this. Look, you see that shit that's going over there in Haiti? You know, if there's a, you know, like say for instance somebody in your neighbor was cooking, like say a neighbor was cooking, and that shit smelling good, and that wind sweep it over so you can smell it, you be like, man, that shit smelling good. Well, see, that would be the same thing what Jefferson was afraid of. If the slaves in our land catch a whiff of what the hell is going on over here, we're going to have that same issue here. Okay? So he said, we got to come up with some kind of provisions to give us an easy passage over our land. You know what them passages were? Christianity. They gave you Christianity. They gave you civil rights. They gave you the voting. They gave you the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment. See, you probably saying, well, damn, didn't he talk about if we don't do something with our children? Well, see, he wasn't talking about the era in time he was speaking. He was talking about in the future. See, he was talking about future generations. He wasn't talking about at the state present time. He was talking about in the future to come. You see, and the okay, so that was me back in 2012 when I first was getting in the game. A couple months I had been in the game at that time, but I had did this video called The Original Rebels. It was a 3-part. At that time I could only do about 15 minutes of video. You know, you had to get acclimated and then get accepted and all that other stuff. But anyway, but Thomas Jefferson said in 1797 that what was going on in Haiti, if the whiff of that got here amongst our slaves, it would stir them up and we would have the same problem. So they wanted to put those provisions in places. As I said, talking about Christianity, and later on and giving you certain civil rights and voting rights, and that whole thing is to make you feel like you acclimated in. But the whole time you've been fighting to get in and never found a real seat in it. So let's look at how, as I read earlier, when you're talking about the birth and development of how the American police department came into existence, right? What you had is part of, you know, the history. You got the legal, political, economic conditions that were all intertwined, creating this so-called institution. And it was always about the institution of slavery and the control of blacks. And it was in this early stages that it was shaping the policies of control. And then you see the creations from this came the slave patrols and the night watches, which evolved and became what we have, your modern police department. And the whole purpose of the design was to control the behaviors of blacks, right? Think about it. Look at where black people live and the segregated, corned off elements, and they put more police around there to keep you from coming across in those areas they deem they don't want you in, right? So police are more prevalent in our communities because they say this is what high crime is, not due to the simple fact of cause and effects that had contributed to that. But anyway, the institution was created and evolved into the police department from slave patrols and night watches. And even going back in history, when you talk about St. Louis, when they say how it was founded, and was there primarily to protect the residents from the Native Americans, right? Even though you over there taking it now, I come to think about it, that's at Lewis, and what was the name of it? The expedition, Lewis, and we got some of the expedition right there that had a Negro that was actually, he was like the interpreter. He had some kind of interpretation that they make us to believe that he could talk to the Indians and he was a Negro. You know, they be selling that to us like the Indians or somebody entirely different than who the Negro is, right? So we've been buying it. So you try to find houses of slaves that can sit there and talk to the Indians, and yet you the white man, you can't do it. But the Negro can, right? But anyway, that's just what they say. So anyway, that's how St. Louis goes back to the formation of them when they was going in there as the frontier cities. So then the slave patrols are starting to develop. Coming to 1704, talking about starting South Carolina, or the Carolina, because at this time it ain't South or North here, it's just Carolina. And this becomes the first slave patrol, okay? And when they tell you that the slave patrol was to help to maintain the economic order and to assist wealthy landowners recovering and punishing slaves who essentially were considered property, is that model still today? The slave patrol is to maintain the economic order, the money, keep assisting the wealthy, recovering and punishing slaves. Now, those who are the ones they deem stamped approved like an FDA, well, they can control you because why? You become reliant on the sustenance that is provided because of your loyalty and obedience to massa. But as the Willie Lynch letter said, that the nigger and the horse in the wild is not good for what? Economics. So a wild Negro is not good for economics. And so when a Negro is non-compliance, non-obedience, that's why you always hear the terms with the slave patrol, resisting arrest, non-compliant, disorderly, right? Because those go back to the whole inception of when they created the whole institution for it. And so what we see is that slavery was fully institutionalized in American economic and legal order, the laws being enacted, right? Both by the state and national divisions of government. So you got the state and the national government. So that's the state and the Fed had their hands in doing what? Implementing to have this structure to control you. Like a lot of people believe that slavery was over after the Civil War, but really it was just like say for instance, back in the day, they may still do it. I'm not saying they don't, but we used to buy a car from somebody. You get the title, you pay them for whatever they want for the car. In exchange, you get the title, you go down to the curse exchange, they sign, you sign, change the bill over, the title over to your name. Well, that's what happened after the Civil War, right? They changed over from the South, and now you became property of the North. Remember they were saying industrial revolution, so you're going to need some workers eventually, right? Not saying that war was coming, but again, there was another thing too. They was trying to prohibit the South from expanding its business. and then, you know, and then having more power coming legislatively. But anyway, they end up in 1933, when you get this birth certificate, now you are now awarded a state. So these police jobs have not changed at all. And so when you don't understand this history of that, you kind of like thinking that when you see on the side of a car says serve and protect, that it means you. Yeah, they'll serve you, right? They'll serve your ass up and throw you and lock you up, kill you, whatever. But they're there to protect, again, the wealthy landowners and businesses. Now, again, because of the system is considered by color, white and black, as Paul Mooney has always excellently said, got the protection for the complexion. And as you've seen the white woman in the park or the bird watcher with the dog, brother was just saying, hey, you need to put on the leash because you kind of scaring the birds away so I can't see birds. But because he was black and he said what he said, no, she gonna use the system on you. Because she knows she has a privilege in saying, our dancer white in distress, here they come. Because a white woman said, a Negro, a nigger is bothering me. And so we see how this manifests, how they got to do it. It was first one time it was given, you know, tobacco, you know, as payment, but then that didn't work. So what happens is somehow we find out that the vigilante groups start to establish themselves because you're even pretending that you're trying to reconstruct and trying to implement blacks into it. And then they was like, well, shit, you acclimate them and we poor whites, and they're going to be equivalent and better than me. They couldn't have that because you had already deemed them by this bullshit way of saying that they subhuman. So y'all already had started off with a damn lie, and those at the bottom could never understood that shit. So how the hell have you found any animal yet that can speak English like you? Fully? Now again, you may say you got slurred tongue or heavy tongue or lisp or, you know what I'm saying, or ebonics, what the hell it is, but you ain't found one yet. So no damn well there ain't no animal that exists that can do that shit. But that's just the sickness in one mind. Right? So anyway, that becomes how you get the institution of your police. So what Joe Biden says in 93 is that we got to take back these streets, right? Oh, we got to take back these streets. You know what I'm saying? They got a cadre of young ones who are unruly, untamed, angered, and don't have shit. And eventually they're going to figure that shit out, that why robbing where we at, that we need to go over there where they at, because they got every damn thing. They made off the money off the ancestors of your, the backs of your ancestors. So one day they're going to figure that shit out. As Thomas Jefferson was saying in 1797, that if we don't put these provisions in, one day we're going to be the murderers of our children. So here's Joe Biden in 93 saying the same thing. If we don't do something, because right now, this shit looks scary. We see the anger coming out of them. We seeing the ferocity out of them. And they're going to get to the point they're going to start not looking at themselves, going to say, well, shit, I'm, you know what I'm saying, robbing the motherfucker for practice because I ain't getting shit. So I'm going to have all this good practice, but when the real time comes, I'm going to be excellent at getting the one when I really need to get it. So we need to figure out a way to do this. So we had to make some provisions. And that's what that crime bill did. And just imagine that. You living up in the hood. There ain't no jobs in the hood, right? Most people who live, if you live in the hood, you don't work right in the hood. You got to work outside your hood. Right? So they ain't got no job. So, you know, there was a story one time, there was a king, and the peasants in his eyes was like they was rumbling because they were not getting, you know, no part of the deal. And he told one of his men to go over there, see that big bowl of penny, take that bowl of penny and toss it out the window. When he tossed that bowl out of penny there, they was all went crazy, took their mind off of on the problems they had with the king not forgiving. Well, it's the same thing kind of like drugs did. For not everybody, but for many people, tossing the pennies was like tossing the drugs in the community. Because when you look at the history of what gangs supposedly had been about, because we were still at that particular time when we had to go across certain neighborhoods that were white for protection and all that other stuff. But then when the drugs came in, it became economics. So now you got territory, and then, you know, just one thing led to another, and then the disinfestation, you start getting generations and so forth, the hood. And next thing you know, you understand? It is what it is today. So who created that? Well, they already said the Contras, right? The Nicaraguan, the whole thing when they was talking about that, right? Freeway Ricky and all that, right? So you have been the main cause of some of the things that we have been dealing with, right? And so Michael Rappaport was just saying who they were. He's speaking in a way that's kind of saying, well, he's saying they animals, they savages. But then he kind of said, well, you would do this shit in broad daylight. As if there's a difference of this not killing at all. Like, why would you do the shit in broad daylight? But he's the one that said they are afraid of black people. So I'm telling you, the reason why they're afraid of black people is because, again, the census is right now, right? Think about that. The census is right now, the 2020 census, but the census is not going to be accurate because pandemic, all this other shit, people are not, either sending in or they ain't having the people come out. And so what's going to happen? Black people are going to be 13, 14% of the population again. For every last 10 years going back, they keep saying we ain't growing. We ain't growing. We ain't growing. But you're attacking the shit out of us. And that's another thing too. When you talk about this whole thing, when you talk about this slave patrolling Patty Road, right? Patty Road 2 is about maintaining and keeping that segment of the slaves in it because to keep them from revolting and uprising. So when we keep seeing these things that keep saying, we see Breonna Taylor getting shot up in her house. You had the Trayvon Martin, it's like somebody who wants to be a cop. You got the Ahmaud Arbery, where he's accosted by the cop. He said he just out there chilling. The cop said, I just want to know what's going on. Wait a minute, you in my neighborhood. Have you been called to do something? Would you run the place? Is the place coming back? No, a black man just can't be sitting idle doing nothing. He's always up to no good. Sound like the same thing when we was listening to the 911 call when you had George Zimmerman talking about Trayvon Martin. With all that being said, no one of them, because I did also a video, the 4-minute mystery of Trayvon Martin, where I resolved that. Right? I'm the only one that I know that resolved that 4-minute mystery that they said Trayvon could have went home. Well, he was trailing them the whole time when he was on the damn phone. You heard when he jumped out and went back in. You can hear him inside the vehicle. So how did he get out a third time? So how's Trayvon accosting you if you get out of your car 3 times? But that's what I said. These people who are doing the cases really don't go in the courtroom. They just represent the family, and then they doing the hocus pocus on everybody, right? And so, you got so much happening to the fact that they're even talking about in a pandemic, people wearing, face masks, and the cops so, those, I remember, was it in Space? It was Will Smith. Well, not Will Smith, Will Rogers. Will Smith, I think his name was. Will Smith. Danger, danger. The robotic shit going. Dr. Smith and shit going crazy and shit. That's how these police is seeing the niggas with all masks on and shit. In his way of him looking at you, you got a mask on naturally, and he already got you criminal. He already done deemed you criminal in his psyche. You having a mask makes him don't know how to operate. So now they trying to equate that now you wearing type of masks and shit that got gang symbolism. So that's going to give me probability to accost you. And then when I say, well, you shouldn't have been wearing red or blue because that's gang. What the fuck, right? Shouldn't be wearing the gang symbols. That there, like every nigga know all the gang symbols. Like we've studied that shit. Now those who are in it, that's something different. But damn, I don't think they're the majority of the population. But that's just some shit because the normality of shit is that everybody under a pandemic is wearing one, but you trying to be a cop and your job as patty roll is to seek out niggas that's not in areas that they're supposed to be in. So here's a nigga walking around with a damn mask. I don't know how to compute this shit. My brain and my mind is not functioning to understand whether this motherfucker is just normal or he's a criminal. I know he's a criminal because he's black. Once I find out that I can take the shit out of my mind because I done figured out you're not what I think you are. So you're guilty till proven innocent in their book. But it's the way they tell you is you're innocent till proven guilty. But we know damn well that's not true. Right? So anyway, you know, I'm going to do this. I've been done long enough. Right? But let's just say this, man. With all these cases that's going down with these police, right? With these police. Is this, with all these scenarios, matter of fact, when you think about in Minneapolis, I want to talk about that. You know, there's a 54-0 record in Minneapolis. You know what that 54-0 record is? 54 times they done had cases dealing with police where some of the residents will say that those cases they should have won. They have never, the residents, the black residents of Minneapolis or Minnesota have never won a police case. 54-0. They undefeated against the police. Now you have George Floyd. You have 4 cops. Matter of fact, you know, the way they try to make it appear, right? I want y'all to see this. You might have seen but you didn't really notice it, right? Check this out. Can we do that? That's a little start with that. So I want y'all to see this. Now, they are asking for certain things, and I'll talk about that too. You see that picture there? That was somebody who was sitting in their car. You can kind of see they got a cracked windshield too, right? And they giving you the angle from which the camera that was videotaping that they show only show you from the side and with the knee with the brother George Floyd on the ground. And you see the Chinese mug that was there. But from this angle here, 3 cops is holding him down. They got the door open. So why is it taking 3 cats that's already handcuffed and another dude on his neck? Now, again, we see this ambulance come after he's already gone. The coincidence of the ambulance getting there after he's gone. Now, you know, they're trying to make it seem like he was just unconscious and died as either on arrival or at the hospital. Those we've seen, again, I didn't want to keep showing that because, again, that image is not good for us because it keep reiterating the situation. A lot of us are angry. A lot of us are upset. A lot of us feel some kind of way. And it's triggering things in our DNA. And so I didn't want to just keep playing that. But here was the angle from the other side of this showing you 3 cops is holding him down. Right? 3. Now, I had watched the press conference too. You see that store there, Cup Foods? Been in business, they say, for 35 years over there. And they the one that called on him. Talking about forgery. You selling hamburgers, hot dogs, ghee rolls. Look like it says on there, look like it's a phone's an accessory. So either you was paying with a check or you was signing something of a card and then maybe he was saying, well, this ain't your signature. Whatever. But again, you called on him. You a restaurant. unless he was buying some accessory. And even with that being said, if it didn't go through, it ain't like in the old school days. Remember the old school days, you could write a motherfucking check, and just because you had the check, they didn't have no digitize or nothing, or get no access code or PIN number, whatever the hell that is when it goes through. It used to just be swipe the motherfucking check, put it in there, and they send the motherfucker to the bank. But you done got up out of there with the damn products. Do any of y'all remember that? There was a time when this electronic shit it wasn't part of the game. So you can't write a bounce ass check today, right? Directly in a store and exchange, you can't get it, because once he take that check and that check gonna come up not clear. So how do you get forgery? How you getting forgery? Huh? How you getting forgery? See? But he came to the press conference trying to keep y'all from tearing his shit up. But he's the one that caused this shit. He the one got George Floyd in the position over some bullshit ass shit y'all selling that we don't know where y'all getting y'all food from, and if they ain't somehow connected with motherfuckers who shoveling the shit to feed us any damn way. You get what I'm saying? But that's all right. They say full fire, but that's another thing too. That's a sleight of hand ass move too. Fire don't necessarily mean fire. You can I mean, there's different terms when they talking about fire. You can fire. You can resonate in fire before I quit before you fire me. Then that allows me to be able to go to another damn department. So, what terminology, other than saying fire, did they fall under the criterion? Did you fire them? Did you at will fire them? What kind of construct? You know what I'm saying? It's a contract. It falls under something. And again, it's kind of like what we found out about with Tamir Rice, the dude that shot Tamir Rice. Remember that? He ended up going to another department, and the reason it fell out that he found out that he transferred, went somewhere else, because he went there and he couldn't pass the psychological test. They said there was something wrong with this motherfucker. Well, ain't that a bitch? Wasn't nothing wrong with him at the other place. He was sufficient enough to be there, the police, but the other place was like, this nigga was not, this motherfucker ain't qualified psychologically to be a cop. We know that shit because he shot Tamir Rice on just pulling up. But see, when we sit here talking like this, man, we always damn wrong and shit, right? We always wrong. But this is the issue that's going to end up eventually coming. Whether it be juries of our peers, or if it's like it has always been, well, let me show you something. Let me show y'all something, huh? Let's go there, huh? Let's go there.
So definitive. Why did the jury see the beating of Rodney King in such a vastly different light? Here's ABC's Judy Muller.
It was never even close. On the very first day of deliberations, a straw vote made it clear that a majority of the jurors favored acquittal. How could that be, given the powerful evidence of the videotape? Two jurors talked to ABC News Today by phone.
Everybody's saying this videotape, but these officers have a job to do, and in doing that job, they have to be given a certain amount of reasonable, and that's what this is, reasonable force.
The defense attorneys were really slick, and they undermined all the evidence that was brought forth by the prosecuting attorneys.
Several jurors say they were persuaded by the defense argument that the videotape did not tell the whole story, and that Rodney King represented a threat to the officers.
They didn't know what they had. You take a man that's over 230 pounds and you put him on the ground, and four officers go in to put handcuffs on him, and he throws those officers off.
The jurors were convinced that it was King who controlled the action, that he could have stopped the beating by surrendering. The officers, they felt, used reasonable force, with the possible exception of one.
I believe Powell was out of control.
That juror was one of four who voted to convict Powell of excessive use of force, a split that resulted in a mistrial on that count. The jury was made up of 10 whites, 1 Hispanic, and 1 Asian. Critics of the verdict are questioning whether this jury of their peers gave the white defendants an edge, and whether King's race was a factor.
It didn't make any difference to me, and I don't think it made any difference to the majority of the jury.
And how do they feel about the violent reaction to their verdict?
Even looking at this after the fact, and I'm very sorry that this happened, but it wouldn't change how I voted.
What human being wouldn't be influenced by this? You know, this is ridiculous. This is chaos right now, and I can't help but feel somewhat responsible.
LA riots, rioters, and infamous footage of trucker being pulled from vehicle says nothing has changed since 1992. You know I'm going to say that again. LA riots, rioters, and infamous footage of trucker being pulled from vehicle says nothing has changed since 1992. This story is coming out of the Yahoo News. Story was done May the 4th, 2020, and this reads. Most people who got to hear about Henry Kiki Watson was when they watched aerial footage of the Los Angeles riots showing a white van driver being pulled from his construction vehicle and attacked. Or else it was when the former Marine, then age 27, was arrested and mugshot along with 5 other young black men and agreed a plea deal to only a modest charge. Or when he appeared with that driver, Reginald Denny, on the Phil Donahue show after being released from jail, shook his hand and apologized for my participation in the injuries you suffered. Today, Watson, who was involved in one of the most notorious incidents in the riots and civil unrest that followed the acquittal of 4 white police officers over the beating of a year earlier of a black motorist, Rodney King, said he has no regrets about what he did. Asked if the 55-year-old Watson would have responded in the same way as his younger self, he says he would. The reason, he says, is that the structural racism that helped fuel the anger and riots following the beating of King has not gone away. Come on. Racism is racism. You know how Americans feel about black people. You know how British feel about black people. It's worldwide. It's not just an American problem. It's a worldwide problem, he tells the Independent from Los Angeles. Shit ain't right. The way that black people are treated in the United States is not right. You're asking if I'm still upset? If I'm still angry? Fuck yes. Nothing's changed. What has changed? It's so funny. People like yourself, journalists, and every year they want to know what's changed. Ain't nothing changed. Throughout the 28 years since the riot, Watson has continued to live close to the intersection of Normandy Avenue and Florence Avenue, where the attack of Denny, then age 36, was carried out. The construction worker was ultimately saved after the intervention of 4 black people, 2 women and 2 men, who went to his aid and managed to drive the truck away from the junction with him in it. They managed to get the red-colored rig to the Daniel Freeman Memorial Hospital, with Denny reportedly coughing up blood. Those people didn't even know him and risked their lives to aid him, Don Kelly, Denny's roommate, told the Los Angeles Times at the time. If no one had helped him, he would be dead. Denny would later appear with Watson on Donahue's show. Review said both the former willingness to forgive and the latter readiness to apologize felt less than overwhelming. This is a civil war, said Denny, who needed intensive hospital treatment and later moved to Arizona, where he maintains a low profile. This is not me against Mr. Watson. It's not a personal vendetta. The problems were happening before Mr. Watson and I were born. Watson, who was only convicted of a minor offense and served less than 6 months, said he had no regrets for his actions. He pointed to the widespread incident around the country of young black men dying at the hands of police. Eric Garner in New York, Michael Brown in Ferguson, as proof that the criminal justice system remains overwhelmingly weighted against people of color. No, I don't. There's no regrets, no remorse, no nothing. That was just ass whooping. Black people, they get beat up for years. We've been getting killed for years. So one ass whooping? No. He adds, you guys write this stuff. I don't have to. I don't make this up. Ain't nothing changed. Do you think I'm going to sit here and tell you, oh, your race relations and everything is wonderful in the United States? It's not. So I'm going to give you what you need to hear. For a number of years, a mural could be seen on the side of Watson's home, documenting a piece of history in which at least 63 people were killed, in which the city appears unable to shed. Last year, the mural was removed when he's had his work done to his home. For the past 20 years, he has run a limousine business. Watson says the coronavirus pandemic and the fact that the data suggests African Americans have been disproportionately affected and killed underscores the plight of the people of color in the United States. He says he is unsure about the origins of the disease, but feels that the elites of China and the United States are looking out for each other. I'm not going to tell you, oh, everything is wonderful. We're holding hands and singing Kumbaya. No. Everything that happens to a black man, woman, or child upsets to the utmost. I feel it all as though it was me, myself, he says. That lets you know they have not changed. You know, they've been killing us. They're still killing us. It's ridiculous. They're getting away with murder. All right, so we're back, right? So, with all these cases that's happening, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, right? We'll have George Floyd, many, many, many more that's sitting out there I have not mentioned, right? Right? So what happens when the jurors are talking about reasonable force like they did in the Rodney King situation? Said, well, based on the video, didn't tell the whole story. What did your eyes tell you? What did you see? It's not about what you see, because the credibility was falling on the defendant, the victim, right? And so the juror was, 10 white and 2 Hispanics. And so here it was, you was going to have to side with a Negro, a nigger. You couldn't do that. Not against good, white, wholesome cops. Yet the video was clear as day. Oh, he was 200, he was 6'4", 230 pounds. 4 guys tried to put him down and couldn't. So, officers have to have reasonable force when they're dealing with the big Negro bucks out here. How come we never see 4 white mugs tackling a white cat? Oh, because they're more compliant, right? Okay. Even in the case what you see with George Floyd, I seen the video that they showed when they got him and walked him to where the restaurant was. He was in compliance. He was already arrested. He was already in handcuffs. Matter of fact, looked like the door was wide open. When you look on the side when they show him in that picture, should I show that again? Show that again. Right, when you see that picture then from the side, what you see is, look like the car door already open. So based on Me assessing that, looked like you was going to put him in there. And somewhere between getting him in there, he already handcuffed, because when I seen him before, the video that showed it, he was already in the handcuff. You know, now if this was a Bruce Lee movie or Jim Kelly movie, somebody handcuffed could be written in the script that he could whoop 3-4 cops. Handcuffed with no hands. Now, as there's some brothers out here batting up, I ain't gonna doubt that at all. You know, I know how he is, right? But we didn't see the actions. So matter of fact, some of the demands that are being asked right now that I think a lot of us are looking at too, is that they need to release the videos from the officers. That's one of the things that should be done, right? Officers should be releasing of their videos. You're going to say all 4 of them didn't have a video on. Most likely you're probably going to use the Chinese one because he was the first one away. Because otherwise you're going to get the close-up. See how they are? You're going to be able to see the close-up of them with them videos, right? Might be seeing some other stuff being down there, sneaking punches instead, right? What about the names of the officers? Wait, okay, you said you fired them, and yet they still can get anonymity. Well, it might be the simple fact that they're letting them scrub all their shit so that people going to seek to find out all their associations, affiliations with shit. So you're giving them time. Because at this time, it was just like you did originally with George Floyd. You wouldn't even mention his name. It's kind of like when you heard the story of the video with Breonna, they talked about how the cop got shot in his leg and all that, but never once mentioned, say, oh, a woman that was inside found dead, as if like the boyfriend did it. But yet still didn't even mention her name. So you gotta be watching these stories, man. They're not, again, they think they slick with that shit, right? And then they slick with it. So they said fire, but I think, is that fire like with or without? You know what I'm saying? You don't have the ability to be a cop nowhere ever again. And then they talk about they want an independent investigation outside of the one because, again, you know, nepotism and family and so forth. We need it out of your hands and put it in somebody else's hand who might have credibility and respectability. And so, you know, the community is getting to the point of saying, man, we're tired of this excessive force and abuse that's happening amongst our people. This administrative misconduct. So they also is floating out the fact that I'm hearing the words of human rights. People saying murder of killing black people or black Americans with impunity. People saying, hey, we're not going to have to want to turn the slogan from I can't breathe to we can't breathe, right? But since I did hear somebody mention, they mentioned the fact that somebody said human rights. You know, May 19th was Malcolm X's birthday, right? And I think Malcolm was about 39 when he was 30 and 65. So what's that, 55 years later? So Malcolm was about 94, right? About 94, right? And Malcolm had tried to do something for me based on the reading I've read. I think what made Malcolm the most dangerous is because, as I just said, human rights. You know, Malcolm had picked up the baton of somebody else. Matter of fact, it was 2 other individuals who had the same notion. You know, like right now, people are talking about reparations. And this really, that's actually a commendable, let's say, agenda to be pursuing, right? But let's look at what Malcolm had picked the baton up from. He wasn't the initiator of it. He just picked up the baton. And when Malcolm picked that baton up and having a alliance with those who were going to be, one was going to be president, and they had a stipulation for him and Malcolm to work together. Remember, they were going to go before the UN. Malcolm was trying to go before the United Nations, right? But Malcolm was not the initiator. But that is why Martin Luther King ended up getting the Consolation Prize of Civil Rights. Now people here in this day and age are saying that civil rights might not have been the fight. It was supposed to have been human rights, right? But that's because Malcolm was doing the fight to get it before and gave Martin the Consolation Prize because of the reputation it was going to put on the country. But as I said, Malcolm picked up the baton. Let me show you where it originated from. You ready to see this? We're going to go out on this, we're going to show this, and then we're going to go up out of here, right? We got hungry, right? So check this out, right? Now, the December 17, 1951, we charge genocide. Petition submitted to United Nations. You know I'm going to say that again. December 17, 1951, we charge genocide. Petition submitted to United Nations. This stories come out of the Zen Education Project. And this is how it reads. On December 17, 1951, Paul Robeson and William Patterson submitted a petition from the Civil Rights Congress to the United Nations titled, "We Charge Genocide, the Crime of Government Against the Negro People." The petition was signed by almost 100 United States intellectuals and activists. Robeson led a delegation to present the document at the United Nations headquarters in New York, while CRC Secretary Patterson delivered it to a UN meeting in Paris. W.E.B. Du Bois was scheduled to accompany Patterson to Paris, but the United States Department prevented him from leaving the country. The book-length petition documented hundreds of lynching cases and other forms of brutality, discrimination, evincing a clear pattern of government inactions and complicity. It charged that in the 85 years since the end of slavery, more than 10,000 blacks were known to have been lynched, an average of more than 100 per year, and that the full number can never be known because the murders are often unreported. The petition cited the United Nations definition of genocide: any intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, racial, or religious group is genocide. The petition concluded, therefore, that the oppressed Negro citizens of the United States, segregated, discriminated against, and long the target of violence, suffer from genocide as the result of the consistent, conscious, unified policies of every branch of the government. If the General Assembly acts as the conscience of mankind and therefore acts favorably on our petition, it will have served the cause of peace. With the Cold War raging, the United States government maneuvered to prevent the United Nations from formally debating or even considering the charge brought in the petition. Working behind the scenes, they were able to prevent any discussion of the petition by the United Nations Commission on Human Rights. When one of the American delegates to the United Nations criticized William Patterson for attacking your government, Patterson replied, "It's your government. It's my country. I am fighting to save my country's democratic principles." United States corporate media gave scant coverage to the petition or the crimes in documents. The CRC is labeled a Communist Front organization, and the few government officials who comment on the petition described it as communist propaganda. Elsewhere in the world, however, it was well received and extensively covered in the press. in Europe, Africa, and Asia, where the United States is competing against the Soviet Union and China for political influence. The document weakens America's free world claims and its assertion of global moral leadership, particularly among non-white people struggling against colonial rule. As the Black freedom movement gathered strength in the following years, Cold War geopolitical influenced Washington reaction to major events like the sit-ins, Freedom Rides, Ole Miss, and so on. On his return to the United States, Patterson's passport was seized by the State Department so he could no longer speak to foreign audiences about the denial of human rights endured by African Americans and other people of color. Robinson, too, was prevented from leaving the country. They and other CRC leaders were harassed and persecuted by the FBI and other federal agencies for the rest of their lives.